Greetings everybody, it's Jim, and I've been wanting to do this video ever since I finished up Starship Troopers 4, Scenario 4, because there was such a similarity between one of the ideas that I've noticed with the scenario. It seemed like a lot of it was generating. You remember me saying that, maybe if you've seen the video, the link will be down below for you to see it. But it seemed like the scenario really doesn't start on turn 1. It actually starts on turn 4 or beyond, when things start getting into the mix, you know. And I noticed that a lot of games do that to just kind of mix things up a little bit, so it's just not some very static, here's my forces, here's your forces, here's the perfect spots to place them, then you go play a game. It kind of reminds me of chess sometimes, how they think for 13 to 14 moves ahead, they know the openings that far. You know, they don't do that later in the game, but in the beginning of the game, most chess masters know the game 13 to 14 moves ahead, and they both get to that spot. Then they say, now the game is starting to be played. So basically, this is what's happening in this little scenario-based game that I'm going to be going over today from Task Force Games. So today I'm going to be going over with you my review of Warriors of Batak from Task Force Games. Okay, so here we have the setup, pre-setup for Warriors of Batak, and like I said, it's a one-shot Johnny kind of deal. You know, you can easily make more scenarios if you want to. The rules are actually quite simple. Matter of fact, there's only like 4 units that are actually different in the game from any other war game that you might have played, very basic, which got me thinking, you know, wouldn't it be good? And especially nowadays, maybe you couldn't have done it as easily back in the day and stuff like that, but just have a standard of wargaming and just say, okay, for rules, and just say, okay, here's the exceptions, and just highlight them in blue, right? Because, I mean, how many times do your eyes glaze over talking about movement and hexes and terrain and how it affects things? So many games use the exact same principle. There are exceptions, but just highlight them in blue. That would be so much simpler. I mean, you can't just get rid of the rules, because just in case somebody's never played a war game before, far and few in between, I know, but you know, it's standard practice to have that in there, and that'd be fine. But just highlight the things that are different. Of course, you'd have to have a master document somewhere saying, here is the standard of wargaming and stuff like that. Somebody should make it, a council decrees it good, and then everybody can go off that one document, right? I think I actually should say that to Columbia Games, because they got the Columbia block system. All their games pretty much work the same, but there's different tweaks. So I think that would benefit them as well. So I got to talk to them about, what do you think? Leave a comment down below. But anyway, as far as this scenario goes, what's going on is the forces of Batak, which are in the yellow, are trying to take over the UPC depots. They're the player in the pink. Okay, so let me show you a picture here of the Warriors of Batak cover again. Now, by looking at this, it looks like, you know, the Warriors of Batak, it's going to be the organics against the technological, that kind of thing you've heard of before. And it's kind of true, because the Warriors of Batak have some creatures that they definitely utilize, but they also have tech too. So it is pretty much, for all intents and purposes, that kind of game. So let's go over to the scenario for Warriors of Batak here. Basically, they have the Batak player in yellow has 15 turns to take over 3 depots from the UPC player in pink. Now, the depots are listed right now. You can see them clearly. They're numbered in blue. Number 1 is in the top left. Number 2 is in the upper right. And number 3 is down below. And the idea is here for the Batak player to control them by just moving on top of them, moving even through them, and that hex is considered controlled. However, of course, that's going to go back and forth pretty easily. Basically, if the Batak player keeps their forces in a depot hex for a complete turn from beginning to end, it is considered destroyed, and then it doesn't matter anymore. They can just move on to the next battle. So there's a lot going on here, and like I said, this is where I think the game takes a few turns to gestate to find out what the real scenario is, because some will fall, some will stay, and that's what's going to happen. So the ones that fall, of course, their forces are going to try to rush to the other ones to give them aid. So there's a lot going on. So right now, let's talk about the units and what makes this game special. So as I show you these forces, you're definitely going to see the idea behind this as being the organic versus the technological. Now, the Warriors of Batak, as you can see, definitely have their BCs that make the game special, but they do have technology too. So it's more like a Star Wars kind of thing, where they can ride Banthas, but they have all the technology. So they actually have the best of both worlds there. So let's take a look at some of these units. Here's the Batak players, some of them. On the top here, you're seeing the Leviathans. So basically, they are winged beasties. They don't necessarily fly. They can't get into the air units. So they do kind of, maybe they hover. But they're fast. They can have 7 movement points, so they can travel pretty good. But they're still considered ground units. Okay, and they have some of the strongest attack strength with the 10. And this works, by the way, your typical attack, defense, movement. Okay. Down below they have some tanks which really are subsidiary. They're not as powerful as the Leviathans whatsoever. And since this works on a ratio, and you'll see it when you see the others, the way the math works is you really got to have 2 tanks to help a Leviathan get any kind of bonus on the defense. Just the way the math works out, the tanks are really not all that great. Then you have their air units, which again really aren't all that great when you compare them to the other team, the UPC. They got a 10, 15, 20. Now the thing is, as we'll show, they have when they're doing air combat, they have their own air combat table, which is a lot different than the regular CRT combat results table, mainly because with the ground you can retreat and do all these other things. In the air, it's just live or die. So here we have the units that make the Batak player really kind of special. It is the scent beacons and the moles. They're big, giant moles that burrow under the ground. Now, the moles don't start on the game board at all, and the scent beacons start in all 4 corners. And what they do is the scent beacons on the Batak player's turn, they dart out 15 hexes in one direction straight. Okay, and then they can go 5 straight in one direction. Okay, and the idea is they will stop if they ever find an infantry unit on the other side and kind of attach themselves to it. And of course, it is called a scent beacon, so it's sending out a signal to its corresponding mole, because you see that there's 4 beacons there with numbers 1 through 4. They have the corresponding moles that they actually work with. So the mole will be activated. The counter is inverted, and as you can see, they're very powerful. The counter will be inverted, and which nomenclates that they will, if that's the correct word, how to say that, they start tunneling underground. Okay, and then at the Batak player's, discretion, it can flip over, saying on a turn, saying, okay, it's rising up and getting ready to attack. It will keep on going to that unit, and it won't stop until it's dead, either by their hand or somebody else's. And if the infantry unit dies before, or any time really, whether the mole gets to him or not, the scent beacon will then, on its next turn, go find another target. Now, a number of things can happen as far as strategy goes when you get hit with one of these things and attached. Do you run away? Do you suicide bomb this guy? You just use them up, because if you get hit and it killed and you have an ally next to you, the scent beacon's just going to go over to another unit, the next unit over on the next turn. And there definitely seems to be a little bit of, when you're playing the Batak player, a little guesswork of where the enemy units might be, because every turn counts in this game. That's the idea anyway. But that is what makes this game for the Batak player a little interesting. I like the idea. It definitely has a science fiction feel of these big moles coming up out of the ground, kind of like the bugs in Starship Troopers, but just in a little smaller section. I can just see it like a big Saturday morning cartoon. Now, I want to take a moment to thank all of you right now, because I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers. So if you haven't done so already, please smash that like and subscribe button and let me know I'm doing a good job. I do appreciate it. So here we have the UPC forces, obviously a less number of them compared to the Batak player, who is, of course, attacking. They do get defensive bonuses, though, depending on the terrain that they're in, that can double their defense value. And speaking of defense values, as you can see, the infantry on the top there, the 10 infantry the UPC player gets, has a defense of 10, which is, of course, the counterfoil to the Batak Leviathan's attack at 10. Again, as you can see, why the tanks on the Batak player side seems to be so ineffective against the infantry. Maybe not so much against the tanks, which are next there. The UPC player only gets 2 of them, but they're definitely there just to take up space. They're not really there to do much of anything else. Now, 3 interesting units that the UPC player does have is the 3 gunboats there. So let me go back to the map here. They can only travel along the canals, but they have a range of 5. They can help bombard with an attack somewhere. Now, when you're looking at that map board, you're still going to say to yourself, well, that's still a pretty limited range considering the depot where the depot hexes are. Maybe with the exception of Depot 1, the other two are pretty safe from those. So what's the point of them? Well, the thing is, again, with these 3 mini battles going on, one of them is going to fall sooner or later, probably with odds. One of them will fall. And when that happens, all those forces aren't just going to stay there. They're going to try to run and help their buddies, okay? So the idea of the gunboats is to get in the way and fire at them and do pot shots along their run. Now, the thing is, this also brings up what these cave hexes are for on the side, because if a unit goes in there, they are invulnerable to air attacks or the gunboat attacks, okay? They can only be attacked by another unit walking in there and trying to block their way to the depots. So the question is it worth going into those caves? It is a little bit of the long way compared to just going over and getting attacked by the airships or the gunships. Is it worth it? Can you take the extra time? And if an enemy unit gets in there to block, that's just going to take more time to get through. Now we get to see some of the strengths of the UPC player now going over the forces, and that is their Air Force is one of them. The Air Force that they have, even though they only get 3 units, just like the Batak player, they are vastly superior. It takes 2 Batak player units just to get 1-to-1 combat odds against the UPC player, and that pretty much means you have to roll a 6 to hope for any result. So that's not likely a good time there for the Batak player. Batak player should pretty much concentrate on just supporting the ground forces, and that's it. And speaking of supporting ground forces, then of course we have the big artillery for the UPC player. The 4 of them, they are definitely very strong, but they are only sticking around in their sections. Once the battle's over, they're pretty much worthless. With a movement of 4, they're not getting to the other battle anytime soon. And they have a range of only 3. So that's pretty much what's going on there. Now, you don't have to wait for my scenario report to find out whether I like this game or not, because the proof is already in this video. When you've seen the setup, you notice that the counters are not clipped at all, and then as I'm showing you the forces, they are definitely neatly clipped, okay? Using the Oregon Laminations counter clipper, the link is down below if you want to get one of those beauties. But anyway, I definitely did like the game. I think it tells a good story. I mean, the tactics of the game, you've done it before, but at the same time, and I'll be going over this in the scenario report, there are other things like the radiation zones that you got to watch out for, as both defender and attacker both have their own concerns about it. It's not as straightforward as all that, okay? But I definitely like it because of the main idea of the story. You see how the battles go, and then you see who's running the mad dash to help the allies and the gunboats trying to get in the way and all that. I can definitely see maybe a few more, not more units of different units necessarily, but I mean just more of the same units, and having maybe a bigger battle would be good too. But I definitely had a lot of fun with it, and the fact that it's only like 10 to 15 bucks on eBay, and don't be fooled, there's plenty of these out there. You can tell they're brand new in the shrink wrap. So definitely, I noticed that with the meta games, a lot of them have been going up in price lately. Is that because I've been taking the ones in shrink and going, I don't know. Maybe it is, it could be. But at the same time, these I know that there's plenty of. So they were probably like 1,000 made or something like that, and they didn't sell them all, and they were in some crate somewhere like Warehouse 13 in Indiana Jones or something like that. Definitely put away there. But this is also online at War Game Vault. I found out. I've seen that too. But you can definitely get the physical version. So I highly suggest you do so. Have a little fun. The game's over in like maybe 45 minutes, and if you get used to it, because you're already used to war games, even quicker, quite honestly, once you get used to the rules of the specialized units and stuff. So that is the video for Warriors of Batak, and I'll see you in the scenario report.